Hi guys, my name is Daniel Cox. I'm a private chef here in Bozeman and Big Sky, Montana. I'm back for the final cooking tutorial, the Charolais cooking classic, where I'll be making a blackened New York strip steak from Charolais beef. I'll be finishing it with a sherry wine pan sauce, a shallot-herb butter, and the best part, a twice baked bacon fat potato. I'm super happy you're here. Stay with us. One of my favorite parts about today's meal, the steak's going to be incredible. The butter that goes on top of it when it's done and melts on top of that sliced steak, it's going to be amazing. But what I'm super excited about is the twice baked bacon fat potato. I'm going to render bacon down, keep all of that good fat and use that back in the potato with butter, salt, pepper, Parmesan cheese. Put it all back in the shell and rebake it to make it a twice baked potato. First thing you're going to want to do is poke a few holes in a russet potato. Just 2 holes on each side, just so it doesn't explode in the oven. I've never had it happen, but I've heard it happens, so we give it a little venting space there so the steam has somewhere to go. I'm going to take it and wrap it in a piece of foil. You're going to have to adjust the cooking time on this based on the size of the potato, right? This is a small to medium sized russet potato. It'll take about 1 hour at 350 degrees. If you have a bigger potato, you just have to adjust that time. Test it with a skewer, make sure it's fully done. It's better to be a little bit over than a little bit under when it comes to this application. This potato, 350 for about 1 hour. So while the potato is roasting at 350, I'm going to start by chopping up the bacon into 1/4-inch slices. This recipe calls for 1 pound of bacon for every 3 russet potatoes. Again, depending on the size, you might want to pull back on the bacon, add more. It's really to your taste. It's really the technique of rendering off the fat from the bacon and then reincorporating that fat into the potato mixture that's going to make this potato as good as it is. So I'm going to take 1 pound of bacon. This is Applewood smoked bacon. I'm going to cut it into 1/4-inch pieces. And then I'm going to render it off in a medium-high pan. You don't need to put any fat in that pan, oil, butter. It's going to make enough fat. Flavor lives in fat. So the reason why bacon is so amazing is because it's 50% fat. All that smoke from smoking the pork belly is all caught in that fat. So the fat that's rendered off of the bacon is going to go right back into that potato. It's going to be incredible. So 1/4-inch slices. So while the potatoes are roasting and the bacon's behind me rendering off all that delicious fat, I'm going to work on the shallot-herb butter that's going to go on top of the beautiful steak after we slice it. It's going to melt over. I'm going to top it with that sherry pan sauce. Let's make the butter. So 2 sticks of soft butter. We're going to mince 2 shallots. You want to take that skin off. And the best way that I've found to mince a shallot, same way that I would mince an onion, it kind of naturally comes apart like that. So what I'm going to do is take my knife, leave the butt end on, the root end on, and take your knife and go down all the way to that root end. And then come back through with your knife and make cuts going all the way to that root end. Once you have a slice down the middle and then a slices that way, we're going to go back through to mince it. The less you have to run your knife through an onion, the less you're going to cry. Just like that. Knife skills just take time, it takes practice. Be patient with yourself. But there we go, we got minced shallots right there. That's 1 shallot. The recipe I wrote for you calls for 2, so I'm going to go ahead and mince another shallot. So the bacon has been rendering for about 5 minutes. You can see that it's already kicking off quite a bit of fat. What's going to happen is the meat on the bacon is going to get crispy. The fat is going to render off into this beautiful fat in the pan. Again, we're not throwing any of that out. We're not straining it. We're not draining it. We're not dabbing it with a paper towel. We're saving all of that because that's the flavor bomb that's going to go into the potato. I'm going to let this go for about 5 more minutes, medium heat. So back to making the butter. I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of butter and add it to a saute pan or a sauce pot. And to that sauce pot, I'm going to add those 2 minced shallots. I'm going to go ahead and sweat that over low to medium heat to really draw out the flavors of that onion. To that pot, I'm going to add 1 sprig of rosemary, 1 sprig of oregano, and 1 sprig of thyme. You can add more than this. This is a very loose recipe. If you have small sprigs of thyme or rosemary, I mean, in my opinion, the more the merrier. But we're going to add a few more because they're very small sprigs of thyme. I have some rosemary growing in my garden right now, and I swear the sprigs are this long. You'd only need 1/4 of it. So use your best judgment. The more herbs, the better. It's just going to be flavor on that steak. It's going to be incredible. So I'm going with rosemary, thyme, and oregano. I'm going to give that a quick chop. And I'm going to throw that in the pan with the butter and the shallots. What happens is all the oil comes out of those herbs and marries with that butter and with the shallot. We're going to then put that, we're going to cool it, and we're going to put that in with the soft butter and mix it in with some lemon zest and lemon juice, salt and pepper. And it's going to be incredible on top of that hot steak. So just a quick rough chop on that oregano, rosemary, and thyme. And I'm going to go straight into that pan with the sauteing shallots. So in the recipes that I wrote for you for this final tutorial of the Charolais Cooking Classic, I included my blackening seasoning rub. Honestly, this goes good on everything. Chicken, fish, pork, beef. What's going to happen is it's going to create a crust on that steak when it goes in the cast iron skillet. I personally love cast iron cooking for steaks. Not only do you keep that pan and all the crust and the burnt bits, makes for a really good start to a sauce. What I'm going to do is take a little bit of olive oil. You want to pull your steaks out an hour before you cook them. Let them come up to room temperature, and what that's going to do is help the internal temperature get to where you want, medium rare, medium, however you like your steak. It's going to get there quicker. So I brought this up to room temperature. What I love about Charolais beef is the internal marbling structure. It's not fatty and greasy fat, it's more buttery and velvety. This is why Charolais beef is some of the most sought after beef in the whole world, and personally my favorite. I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of oil and just go on the outside of the steak. It's going to give that rub something to adhere to. So I'm going to take that rub. I included the recipe in your recipes attached to this video. And I'm going to just go right on top of it. Be generous with it. This is your chance to season the steak. So I'm going to go on each side. Both sides, top. That's our potato. So we'll grab that in a second. Top, bottom. I'm going to flip it up and get the top of that fat cap as well. Thing I like about the New York strip steak is it has that 1/4 inch fat cap on top. It creates a really good rendered piece of fat on top. Unlike a ribeye, which is also delicious, it doesn't have all of that inner muscular fat that a ribeye has. It sits right there on top and really adds a lot of flavor to your steak. So there we got our New York strip, a little bit of olive oil, that blackening rub. I'm going to let that sit on there for about 10 minutes to really sink into that meat and adhere to it. And then we'll start searing off that steak. So I went ahead and pulled the potatoes out of the oven, 350 for 1 hour. You're going to want to test it with a skewer or with a fork or a paring knife. But they should be pretty soft to the touch. These feel incredible. And you could use these for a classic baked potato. We're going to go a little bit more complicated than that. The twice baked potato is, I mean, it's a great use of a potato. So what I'm going to do is take those potatoes once they're done, cut them in half lengthwise, just like that. I'm going to let them cool down a little bit so I don't burn myself. And I'll show you how we're going to make the twice baked potato here in a minute. So in a cast iron skillet, medium to high heat, I'm going to get a couple tablespoons of oil in the pan and start searing off the steak. So before we start searing off that steak in the cast iron skillet, I got 2 sticks of soft butter here. I've got this shallot mixture. It's got rosemary, thyme, oregano, just sauteed lightly in a little bit of butter, just to where those shallots get sweet. I'm going to take that mixture and go right into the butter. Let them cool down slightly so they don't completely melt the butter, but to that, I'm going to add the zest of 1 lemon. A lot of flavor lives in the peel of a citrus fruit, orange, lemon, lime, grapefruit. It's got a lot of natural oils. It gives a ton of flavor. If you don't have a microplane in your kitchen at home, it's an essential tool in a kitchen. For me personally. You can use it for ginger, garlic, grating zest, hard cheeses like Parmesan, which you'll see a little bit later. But for this application, we're just doing the zest of the lemon. Just the yellow, not the white. The white gets bitter. The yellow is more sweet and has a ton of lemon flavor to it. Imagine that right on top of a hot steak. It's going to release all of that oil from the zest. It's going to be amazing. Once I have the zest off the fruit, cut it in half. I'm going to go ahead and add the juice as well. To that, season it with salt, and then we're going to mix it up with a fork. For this application, it doesn't need to be perfectly mixed by any means. It's going right on top of a hot steak, and it's going to melt on top of that steak. It's just going to be an absolute flavor bomb. You could put this into a container with a lid and keep it in your fridge for a week, 5 days to a week. You can use it on eggs, you can put it on fish, you can put it on just about anything. It's going to be delicious. So over medium-high heat, I'm going to go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of oil, avocado oil, olive oil, either one. That steak has had that rub on there now for about 10 minutes. So it's really kind of penetrated the meat and the fat on that New York strip. And we're going to go ahead and sear it on one side. You could do this on the grill, 100%. What you're going to lose if you do it on the grill is all of the flavor in that oil and the crust in the bottom of that pan to make a pan sauce. You won't get that. You can still make this recipe, the pan sauce, in a pan, but you won't get that beef flavor, all that oil that came off of that delicious steak. It'll work, but it won't be quite as good as a cast iron skillet. Look how quickly that already starts to blacken. It's been in the pan for 30 seconds. It's already starting to kind of get a good crust. We're going to let that go for a couple minutes. I want to get a really nice sear, really nice crust on that first side. Now, before we go to the second side, side B, it's crucial that you get that top fat cap of the steak. So what I'm going to do is get it up on its side, try to balance it. If you got to hold it there in place, hold it there in place. It'll be absolutely worth the extra effort to get that top fat cap nice and rendered. And when I say rendered, I mean the fat melted off of it so it becomes crispy and really good texture on the top of that steak. Hold it there. See if you can lean it in the pan so you can walk away from it for a minute, but really make sure you render off that top fat cap. Look at that. Starts to get a crust, starts to render off that fat. I'm going to go on to side B, and I'm going to throw it in a 350-degree oven until the internal temperature reads about 125 for medium rare. The technique of finishing a steak in the oven is very much a restaurant technique. I was taught it early on in my career. It's an incredible way to control the cook of a steak or a piece of chicken, a piece of fish, either way. You cook it on side A, flip it to side B, and go into an oven and let it gently come up to the temperature that you want. Sometimes if you're working with a steak that's 24, 25 ounces, a bone-in ribeye, something like that, it's going to take time for that heat to get to the middle of the steak. Finishing it in the oven is a great restaurant-style technique that's going to really help you in your home cooking. So while the steak is in the oven finishing at 350 degrees, I'm going to go ahead and put together the filling for our twice-baked potatoes. We've got 3 russet potatoes. Got a half a stick of butter diced up. Doing this gently because you don't really want to damage the skin of the potato, but you want to get all of that potato out of there. These are going to be so good. Get all the potato out of that skin, like that, without damaging that skin. Take your time, do it right. It's worth the effort, I promise. So far in the bowl, I have the potato, half a stick of butter. I'm going to add pepper, salt, and then I took that half a pound of bacon and rendered it off in the pan. I let it kind of cool a little bit, but you want to get all, here's my timer for my steak. You want to get all the bacon and its fat into that pan. There's no way that is not delicious. On top of that bacon, we're going to go in with a cup of Parmesan cheese. Invest in the good stuff. This is Parmigiano Reggiano. You can use Pecorino Romano. Fresh cheese is going to give you such a better nutty, cheesy flavor than the pre-grated. If that's all you got, that's going to be delicious too. But invest in the good stuff. This chunk of cheese is about $8. It'll be worth every penny. I'm going to go ahead and grate, again, on that microplane, essential kitchen tool. I'm going to go ahead and grate 1 cup of this Parmigiano Reggiano. Again, Pecorino Romano would be delicious. Either one's going to add great flavor. See how quickly that breaks the cheese down? It's nice, it's light, it'll melt really well. Microplanes are an incredible tool. I'm going to go ahead and add 1 cup of cheese to that mixture. And then some thinly sliced green onions. You could absolutely play with this recipe. You could add truffle oil. You could add smoked sea salt. You could add liquid smoke. This is the base of a really delicious twice-baked potato. Make it yours. Have fun with it. I'm going to go ahead and add that green onion in there. Then we're going to give this a mix. You could also mix this in a hand mixer or in a standing mixer. But I mean, look how incredible that looks. What we're going to do now is go onto a sheet tray. We're going to put those potato skins down. And fill back in that potato mixture with all the bacon, all the fat, the butter, the green onion, salt and pepper, right back into that potato skin. Twice baked bacon fat potatoes. It just sounds delicious. So right back into that potato skin. We're going to go back in the oven, 350 for about 10 minutes to really warm all of that through, melt the cheese. You could finish it off with a little broil if you wanted to brown the cheese a little bit. The broiler would work really well for that. Kind of just leaning them up against themselves or each other to support each other in the oven. If you got a little extra, it's a present to yourself. So 350, 10 minutes, and you get those in the oven. Just like the microplane, a digital quick read thermometer is another kitchen essential in my book. I'm going to go ahead and temp this steak. I mean, come on, couldn't have asked for better. It's at 125.5. That's a perfect medium rare steak. At this point, I'm going to rest it. A good rule for resting is 10 minutes for every pound of meat. So if you're cooking a 16-ounce ribeye, 16-ounce New York strip, you're going to want to rest it for at least 10 minutes. Frankly, the longer the better. Let that juice reincorporate into that piece of meat so that when you go to slice it, all the juice doesn't run out. I'm going to let this thing rest. Meanwhile, I'm going to build a sauce right inside of this cast iron skillet with all that delicious fat and crust off of that steak. While that steak is resting, the potatoes are in the oven for the second time, finishing off, melting that Parmesan cheese, really marrying the flavors together. The last part of this dinner that I'm actually really excited to teach you guys about is how to make a pan sauce. I get more questions about sauces than anything else. So in this cast iron skillet, you'll see there's all of this good crust, all this black where the salt and the pepper kind of charred in the pan. There's also some of that fat that came off of that New York strip. We don't want to get rid of any of that. That is the base of our sauce. I'm going to put it over low heat once we have minced shallots and minced garlic ready to go. So leave it off heat for now. Go ahead and prep your shallots and garlic. I'm going to do one shallot minced, just like I showed you earlier. Take that skin off. Sometimes for me, it's a round vegetable. Sometimes for me, it's easier to cut it in half to create a flat surface so you don't cut yourself. With garlic, it's a little bit different. You can mince it like that. It's a little bit more tedious. What I like to do, take that root end all the way off. You don't want that. Discard the root end of your garlic. Very simply, carefully, with the side of your knife, smash your garlic. It kind of gets it halfway there for you, and then just take your knife and go back through and break your garlic down. You might remember a trick I showed you all a few videos before, but you can take some of that kosher salt and mix it in with your garlic, and it works as an abrasive to help break down the garlic. You can hear it on your knife. It starts to break the garlic down from the abrasiveness of the salt. Really cool trick. Really helps get your garlic broken down. But it also absorbs some of that garlic oil, so it's not left on your cutting board. It's in that salt when you put it in the pan so you don't lose that garlic flavor. Anyway, cool tricks, tips, hacks. I love that kind of stuff. I hope you guys enjoy it too. So right here we got one minced shallot, 3 cloves of garlic. I'm going to go back on with that cast iron skillet, low medium heat. I'm going to saute that garlic and that shallot for about 2 minutes. While the shallot and the garlic are sweating, or sauteing, sweating is a culinary term for just quickly, lightly sauteing something just until the vegetable looks like it's sweating. What I'm going to do is go ahead and zest the lemon, juice the lemon. We're going to finish the sauce with lemon juice and lemon zest. So while that's sauteing, I'm going to go ahead and prep that out. Already, the shallots, the garlic have only been in the pan for 30 seconds. You just get hit with the aroma of those aromatics, the shallot, the garlic, mixed in with that beef fat, the blackening seasoning that was in that pan. It's an incredible smell. And you can see in the pan that it's starting to pick all of that up. Okay. The shallot and the garlic have only been in the pan for about 30 seconds. Right away you get hit with the aromatics, the smell of that shallot and garlic, mixing with the beef fat and the blackening seasoning that was in that pan. It's an incredible smell. It's going to be an incredible flavor too. It's already starting to pick up a lot of that off the bottom of the pan. Once that's sweated off for about 1 minute, I'm going to add in the sherry. And at this point, go ahead and turn your heat up a little bit because you're going to want to reduce that by half. And this is really the base of how you make an incredible pan sauce. You can do this with anything. You can use red wine, white wine. If you're doing fish, you would want to do a white wine sauce. You could use stock. You could use bourbon if you're going to make a bourbon sauce. It's really just a technique that I want you to understand. From here, you can really make it your own and really play with it. Right away, it starts to boil. You can see that it's starting to reduce. Once that sherry is reduced by half, I'm going to go in with some heavy cream. Incredible smells coming off of this sauce. I'm super excited for you guys to try it. While that cream and that sherry continues to reduce, it's going to go pretty quick. I'm just really roughly chopping 1 sprig of rosemary and a little bit of parsley. I'm also going to dice up 1 tablespoon of cold butter. And right here I have the components to finish my sauce. The juice and zest of lemon, rosemary and parsley, cold butter. There's 2 ways to know if your sauce is done. You can either go the back of the spoon method and see if it coats the back of the spoon and holds the line. That's the coolest way to do it. And this does. So I'm actually going to turn this off. Or pea-sized bubbles. So the inside, like a pea, a frozen pea, if the bubbles are the size of a pea, that means the liquid, the water has evaporated off, and now what you're left with is a nice thick sauce. So 2 ways: you can coat the back of the spoon or look at the bubbles. If they're nice and small and tight, that means your sauce is reduced enough. And then from here, the rest of the work is done off heat. So off heat, I'm going to add that lemon zest. I'm going to add those herbs, and I'm going to add the cold butter. The butter being cold is essential because it brings the temperature of the sauce down and helps the butter emulsify into that sauce. I'm going to go ahead and just give that all a good mix until it incorporates, and your pan sauce is complete. So it's truly just a technique of sweating off your aromatics, your shallots, your garlic, reducing that wine. You could also do beer, you could do bourbon, you could do white wine. Reduce that by half, add in the fat, and then bring that bubble down to a pea-sized bubble or to where it coats the back of the spoon. And then off heat, you're going to mount it or finish it with cold butter, those fresh herbs, that lemon and the zest. Really just layering those flavors on top of all that good beef fat that was in the pan. Makes for an incredible sauce. So right here, we're done, you guys. We've made the potatoes, we've seared the steak, we finished it in the oven at 350 degrees until it was medium rare. We made a beautiful pan sauce. This is restaurant quality food that you guys could do at home, and I'm so excited that I was able to teach you how to do this. We're also going to be doing a Q&A on the 30th of this month on Facebook, where you guys can ask me as many questions you want about this recipe or frankly anything else. I love doing this kind of stuff, and I'm super excited to be here and be doing this with you. Let's plate the food. So we got the twice baked bacon fat potato going down on the plate. And what I'm going to do here in a minute when we're ready to eat is go ahead and put a dollop of sour cream on that. You could finish it with some more green onions, some chives, hot sauce, whatever you like. The steak is went ahead and rested for about 10-15 minutes. That is a very important part, so when you slice the steak, it doesn't bleed all the juices out onto your cutting board. And I would say that's pretty close to perfect, you guys. 125 degree internal temperature. If you like it done a little bit more, a little bit less, you go ahead and do that. I like a medium rare steak. I'm going to take that shallot herb butter that we made earlier. It's nice and soft in the bowl. How good does that look? Take that shallot herb butter, go right on top. The last thing we got to do is go ahead and give it a dollop of sour cream on top of that potato. And maybe finish it with just a little bit of that blackening seasoning from the steak. And we're all done, you guys. Got a blackened Charolais beef New York strip with a twice baked bacon fat potato, a shallot herb butter, and a sherry pan sauce. It's going to be delicious, you guys. I'm so happy I was here. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really fun partnership with DeBrucker's Charolais Beef. And I'm really looking forward to the Q&A we have coming up at the end of the month. Can't wait to see you there. Thank you so much.